Hey everyone, it's Nina. Today's video is going to be all about manifestors. So, as a manifestor myself, I wanted to share more of my experience. I know last year I posted a lot of videos about kind of like my deconditioning and what it's like to be a manifestor who's kind of finding her way in this crazy world. And so for this specific video, I just want to talk about what it's like to really have a relationship with a manifestor and what to expect, and then to kind of just understand our type on a different level, to kind of see us in a different way than how we might be portrayed by Raw, and then also to kind of just talk about like what we really need and how we best operate. And it can feel very confusing to people because we have like this sort of closed off, or what they call like a repelling aura. And not that that's like a bad thing or anything, we're just kind of protecting our energy. And so people might be confused by that because they can't really see past that. But there is a way to really work with us as, the sovereign beings that we really are, when we are fully embodying and stepping into that sovereignty and owning our power, and also like deconditioning and doing our own inner work, and like owning not just the good stuff but also the bad stuff, and learning how to kind of work with that and like own that, instead of allowing it to run our lives or come from like a not self space, because most people are coming from a not self space. And so what I'm going to talk about today is just how you can best work with manifestors, and how we kind of just experience life, and what we truly need, and what really makes us happy, and what we need out of friendships and relationships, and how we're just really different from other types, because we're not necessarily meant to be in groups. As a fourth line, I do have my network and I love to be around other people, and as a kitchens environment, I love to be in busy places, but at the same time, like, I also really need my time alone, and I need to have that space. And so that means like dipping into my social circles and then going off and like not being seen or heard from them for like weeks on end. And it's actually like a very typical normal thing, or like behavior from manifestors, that other people can get very confused about. But I'm just gonna kind of start from the beginning and kind of work into that, and like what are the best ways that we can be approached or like worked with and have really healthy, beautiful relationships with us. And I think it becomes very difficult for people because from a very young age, like as soon as we come out of the womb, Raw talks about how like the mother's first words are like uh-oh, or like shit, because they're like, they don't know what to do with manifestors. And so instantly, they try to control us because they can't see past our aura. And so our entire lives, we're kind of like beaten down into submission until we learn how to really not trust ourselves and trust the power that really lives within us, because we've had to live in such a big, like in this like box of other people saying this is how you need to be, and this is how society operates. And we work these 9-to-5 jobs, and we have all these labels and these expectations that are put on us just like anyone else. But from like a manifestor perspective, it's like incredibly disempowering, and we really lose ourselves. And someone with an open heart like makes it even harder, because it's like you kind of have to really dig yourself out of this hole to be like, oh, like I've been told to live this way and I've been told to do these things for most of my life, but now I get to really go venture off without being punished. And so that was something that I really experienced from a very young age, is like just feeling like other people needed to control me. And so I learned how to, first of all, go and be very secretive and do things in secret, because people that would try to control me, I would say, go screw yourself. And then I would go find a way where I could go like to go through the back door and figure out how to do something when someone told me no. And so just know that that's just kind of like the energy that we have. We have an urge, or we have an idea in our head, and we're going to go do it. If it's not safe, or it's hurting somebody, or like, something that's just like against the law or whatever, obviously like don't, that's not something that should necessarily be like worked around. But for the most part, it's because other people put rules in place for us, and we need to go out and have those experiences And depending on what profile you are, how many of like 3rd or 6th lines you have in your profile, like you need to go out and have experiences, and you need to like, I don't say screw up, because you're not screwing up. You need to have experiences in order to learn from them. And so we're all these unique beings, and we're told not to do things. And so just from a very young age, like, you know, I would go off as a child, and like my parents would forget that they had a 3rd child, quite honestly. I would go off and I would go take a nap, or I'd be in the backyard playing in the leaves, constructing them in the shape of a house in different rooms and putting my stuffed animals in there, and like going and having a tea party, and like going and baking a cookie when my parents were taking a nap, and like have this tea party with cookies with my stuffed animals when I was like 5 years old. And so like I would just constantly be going off in my own little world, and I would just get these urges, and I would just go and have them. And you know, I wasn't necessarily punished for some of those things, but some of those times I was. Actually, for a lot of times, you know, it was like I would do something and I would be punished, and I would be, you know, shamed or spanked, or, you know, I would have privileges revoked from certain things. And obviously there's a fine line between like punishing a child or like teaching them lessons, but there's also like the part of like trying to control them because you don't understand them, and they don't necessarily try to understand the child. And so as a child, you pick up these belief systems and the shame and this guilt and this like feeling like people don't really understand you, and they don't want to understand you. They just want to control you, and they want to project their own expectations on you. And so it feels incredibly lonely. And it can also be incredibly confusing too, because there are going to be people who are attracted to you, and they're going to want things from you. And then it's like very repulsive to manifestors when there's like neediness from another person. And that can also be very confusing too, because while we are very, very loving beings, like, and we're very soft and cuddly on the inside, like we do need our space. And that's another thing about manifestors, is that we really need our space. And when I say space, I mean like we need that freedom to be able to go off and do something without someone constantly questioning us or saying like that's not okay or whatever. And this is where our responsibility comes in to fully communicate and inform other people that are going to be directly impacted by our actions and what we're doing. But you know, when we're in flow, when we are in our manifestorness and our manifestor flow, anytime someone comes and interrupts that flow, it's like a ticking time bomb. Like we're just going to get more and more angry, and it's going to continue to interrupt our flow, because once that flow is interrupted, it's like we have to like get back into that flow again. And so it gets very annoying and frustrating to manifestors, and that's part of the reason why we get angry sometimes, because we don't have that space to do that. And not even just that, but like also like I've been in previous relationships or friendships where I'm like, for a couple of weeks I like get really obsessed about something, and I go and do it, and I'm like in my own world, and I'm enjoying my own world, and then people are like, hey, don't you appreciate our relationship? Don't you appreciate our friendship? Why aren't you making and prioritizing time for me or for this? And it's like, as a manifestor, I'm like really confused, because I'm like, I love you. Like, why? Like, I didn't know that I was supposed to spend X amount of time with you in order to have like this relationship that you're, you know, projecting onto me. But for me, a healthy relationship as a manifestor is being able to have that space to go and move about freely. And to me, it's just like there's such deep loyalty as a manifestor when we have that space and that freedom to go off and do our own thing, because we're ultimately going to come back to our people and be like, hey, guess what? This is what I worked on, and this is, you know, something I learned about myself, and this is something I initiated into the world. And then that is when you can shower love onto the manifestor and say, wow, your impact is amazing, and you can acknowledge their impact and what they're doing with the world. And we're just gonna like open up and allow you deeper into our world. And although you may not be able to see past our closed aura completely, like the people who are really in like a manifestor circle, like they really get the depths and like the beauty that really lies within us, and like the softness and the tenderness and like the deep love that is within us, because like I said, we're just like incredibly loyal. And like if you have access to that, do not try to cling on to it. Just appreciate it for what it is. And just know that you're not going to have consistent access to us from like a time perspective if you are really in a relationship or a friendship with a manifestor who is fully stepped into their power, because they are going to be operating like on a whole nother level, like doing what they feel called to do in what may seem like random or spontaneous moments. And so you're not always going to have that consistency in like interactions with them. And so that can be like hard to grasp, especially with how society kind of views relationships to be, where you're in a marriage and you take care of kids and like all of these things. And obviously if you're in those situations, like that's totally fine. And some people may love that, depending on different aspects of their chart. But as a manifestor, we still need our space and our time to be able to go and do our things. And we can't have these expectations that are put on us, because it's very stressful for us. Like it's another form of control of like people trying to put us in a box. And like I said, obviously if we're like in a relationship, there's going to be some compromise. If we have, if we're trying to have like that typical societal relationship where, some people go to work and they come home and then they spend time with their partner, and it's like every single night, or their partner goes with them to every single thing they do, and they try to like bring their partner into every single like hobby that they do. And I've done this in the past, and it made for an incredibly miserable relationship, because it was like there was like so much codependency going on. And like sitting back and reflecting on that, I'm like, wow, that was really not self. And as a manifestor, I wasn't really fully stepped into my power at that time. And I look back and I'm like, holy shit, like no wonder I was so miserable. My partner was so miserable, because it's like we were spending too much time together. But then when we weren't, it was like the other person wasn't happy because I wasn't giving enough attention, or I wanted to go off and have hobbies and do things and be with my friends or like whatever. And it wasn't like there was this trust where I would always come back and give deep love. Like there was always this like back and forth. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It was just a huge learning experience of being like, okay, like how do I truly want to define a relationship? And it's like completely radically different than I think what society thinks or tells us what is typical, or what our parents have emulated to us. And so as manifestors, we get to really initiate and dictate that. And I think a lot of people resist this type of relationship or this like dynamic, because there is a lot of not self, or there's neediness, or there's an inability to step into their sovereignty or like their wholeness as a being. And so there's expectations of being in a relationship. And it's like, as I start to really kind of move out of that belief system and really see it from like, as an observer, you think about like cats. Like I've written a blog post about this. Like manifestors are really like cats. Like if you think about it, like cats, they'll come to you, and if you want to hug them, they're gonna like run away, or like they're gonna be playful and they're gonna be fun and you're gonna love them and they're super cuddly, but they're gonna go off in the middle of the night and hunt their mice, and they're gonna go off and do things, and you're gonna be like, where are they? I don't know. But at the end of the day, like you still love the cat. You're not trying to change the cat. Like it just is what it is. Just like you look at a flower and a tree and a plant and like anything else natural in this world, like why would you ever want to change it? Like it is what it is. And it's just like with the manifestor, or any other type actually, or any other person, it's like anytime you're trying to change them or you have expectations, like you're going to kill it. You're slowly going to suffocate it. And with a manifestor, you just cannot try to change them or have those expectations, because nobody wins, because there's a sense of like control or neediness in that relationship, and that just cannot survive. It's just not sustainable. You can try, you can try. And I'm like the poster child for that, who tried and dragged on, relationships in the past, and it wasn't healthy. And like I said, it's nobody's fault. Like it's just when you really start to learn who you are as like a manifestor, you're going to start to be open to making changes in your life, and there will be people that are going to fall away. Like your world will literally crumble, and this is what the whole deconditioning journey is talked about in human design. And I talk about it through the lens of human design, but you can look at it from a perspective of like, oh, I'm doing inner work, or I'm healing, or I'm doing like trauma therapy or whatever. Like to me, it's all the same. It's just, you're just using different language. And so when you start to do that and you learn how to set boundaries and you really start to go inward versus externalizing everything and going to people outside of yourself, and you go inside and you go through this process of like awakening where your belief systems are crumbling to the ground, your identities are crumbling to the ground, and you're like, who the hell am I? And you have to learn like who you are, and you realize that it's kind of a blank slate. Like you can do whatever you want. And I'm not speaking just from a manifestor, I'm saying for anybody that goes through this process, but only you know based on your inner authority what feels right, whether it's an emotional or sacral or ego or mental, or no authority with our reflectors. But like you learn how to come back to yourself and like to go back into that inner world, and so you learn how to trust that. And so with manifestors who are really just fully embodied and really stepping into their power, they're going to live their lives very, very differently. So manifestors, at the end of the day, we're just lone wolves. We're here to just go off and do our own thing, and at the end of the day, we will come back to our people. We are loyal to a T. And if there's any fear within anybody else that says, oh, well, if this manifestor isn't paying any attention to me, just let them go. Let them go, because if they are correct for you and they are following their inner authority and you are following your inner authority, they will come back to you. It's really letting go of that attachment or that neediness. And that's something that you need to look at within yourself, because when you're projecting that onto other people, manifestor or not, like it's just not going to end well. There's always going to be some expectation, and someone is always going to be hurt or let down. So I think this is all that I really have to say about manifestors, is that we are very sensitive beings. We've been controlled since the moment that we were born, and we're slowly waking up to the fact that we don't have to follow that anymore. We don't have to be controlled by other people, and we don't have to be angry about it. We can just see it for what it is and then go and create our own path. And so we're in that process of really doing this as people are really beginning to wake up, or people are getting into human design, or they're going through their healing work and they're stepping into their own sovereignty. And as manifestors, like, we're incredibly lovable. Like, we love our people, and we will be so loyal to you till the end. And that space and that freedom is going to be so incredibly important to us. So and just one last thing too, like, it's not just, we're lone wolves and we go do our own thing, and like, we're just going to constantly hurt people and let them down. Like, there is going to be some compromise here and there, because like, we live in this 3D reality, and there needs to be compromise unless someone is like fully operating as themselves, and it's like they're just going to be fully operating as themselves unapologetically. But we're in relationships and we have kids, and there are things that we need to do, and everyone's different in the way that we operate. But honestly, like, giving manifestors space and then not interrupting them when they're in flow, like, that's really big. And also just informing manifestors as well, like letting us know what you're up to when it directly affects us, because it honestly takes a lot of our energy to be like, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? And it's affecting us. And so that takes more of our energy to try to figure things out. So it's like this constant communication. Like, communication is so big, and it makes so much sense as a manifestors with our defined throats. Like, communication is always going to be a really, really big theme for us, to constantly be informing people that we're directly affecting, and then also for others to communicate to us like what they're doing and how it's going to affect us, because it just completely takes the guesswork out of a lot of things. So just know that manifestors are not here to intentionally hurt other people. We're generally just confused, and we're sad, and there's a lot of trauma, and there's just a lot of like trust issues with manifestors, and it's our own journey to really wade through that and work through that. And for me, my own process was going through a really big awakening and kind of being sat on my butt for 3 to 6 months, looking at my stuff and taking ownership of my own stuff, but then also learning how to set boundaries for myself and say where I was not stepping into my sovereignty, and learning what it really means to be a manifestor, and then teaching other people around me how to interact with me and how to treat me by the boundaries that I'm putting up, because I do have people who are constantly coming after my energy, and I can tell and I can feel when they're disappointed if I'm not giving them the time that they want, or I'm not making a time or effort to be in a friendship or a relationship with them. Well, to me, that's like very incredibly repulsive, honestly. Like when someone is like, well, why aren't you hanging out with me? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And it's like, when there's a mutual agreement between a manifestor and somebody else in any type of relationship, whether it's a family member or a friendship or an actual romantic relationship, like there needs to be communication and expectations. And the way that I communicate it as a manifestor to my friends is like, this is what I'm doing. You may or may not see me for a couple days or a couple weeks if I'm going through an urge, or if I'm in a very deep rest cycle and I need to be alone. Like, I communicate that to my friends and I say, no, this is just who I am and this is how I operate. And, you know, I love you and I respect you, and the fact that I'm giving you time and energy and I'm opening up to you, like, this to me is almost like a contract that, yeah, like, we're friends, we're cool. And then I can go off and do my own thing. And if you want to reach out to me, great. If not, I don't care. Like, you can be in my life or not out of my life. It's just, you can add value to mine and I'll add value to yours if we're both operating correctly at the end of the day. So I think that's it for now. I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and if you have any experiences about being a manifestor or operating around a manifestor, just leave a comment below and let me know how this goes for you in any type of integration or experimentation in your own life with manifestors or with yourself as a manifestor. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching and working with manifestors and quadrites who are kind of on this path of really learning how to step more into their power. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to go to my website at nina-elise.com, and you can see a lot of my options of working with me on there as well. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.